and will be available to view online now and in the future. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. I have had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Those attending in the chamber, please be aware that we are all on camera and you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking. And please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. Committee members participating remotely, can you please refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. And please remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not talking. Right, we move on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, attendance and apologies. Niall, do we have any apologies?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor John James and Councillor Chris Tew.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Niall, could you please ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they have any interest to declare?
Yep, okay. If we could start with Councillor Ashley.
None this time.
Okay. Councillor Best.
Nothing to declare, no.
Councillor Evans.
None that I'm aware of, no.
Councillor Gordon.
Nothing from me.
Councillor James.
Yes, interest in items 4, 5 and 6 has been a member of Pontypool Community Council.
Okay, my apologies. Councillor Haller as well, sorry.
Exactly the same as Councillor James, Pontypool Community Council interests.
Okay, and Councillor Jones.
None that I'm aware of now.
Okay, yourself, Chair.
Nothing to declare, thank you.
Councillor Slade.
No interest to declare.
Councillor Williams.
No interest to declare.
Right, that's it, is it, Niall?
I think Polly wants to come in.
Yes, Polly?
Chair, if I could just speak with Councillor Evans in relation to his personal interest. I just wondered whether or not, because South Wales Fire and Rescue Service have been consulted on agenda item 4, whether he needs to declare an interest.
Yeah, I could do that just as thing, but I looked through the report. I couldn't physically see it there, but they are part of the process. So, if I can give mine, then probably Councillor Best will have to do it as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll declare as an interest. Sorry, I forgot.
Right, thank you, Councillor Best. Right, we'll move on now to item 3, minutes of the Planning Committee from the 20th of April 2023. Members, could you possibly state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes? If not, I will take them as approved. Can't see any hands up, so we'll take them as approved. Thank you. On to agenda item 4, planning application 17/P/0468/OUT, residential development of up to 900 dwellings, retention of employment, use class B1, B2 and B8, plus other existing uses and associated parking and servicing, provision of a primary school, a neighbourhood centre, including a mix of uses, use classes A1, A2, A3, B1, C3, D1 and D2, access arrangements from the A4042 and Old Abergavenny Road, landscaping and areas of public open space and other associated infrastructure. So can I ask Richard Lewis, Head of Planning and Development, to present the report, please? And I think Richard's got some people he'd like to introduce to us this afternoon. Are you on, Richard? Because I can't hear you. Are you muted?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Right. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I was just saying I have Amy Longford with me. She's the Monmouthshire County Council Heritage Officer. She's on my left, and Amy is here because she's had a long involvement in this application with regard to the listed building on the site.
Yes.
I have Leanne Harris on my right, who's the Highway Development Control Officer. And online we have Mark Thomas, who's the Deputy Chief Highways Officer and Climate Change.
Thank you. We welcome to the meeting. Thank you, Richard.
Okay, so you've heard the description of the application. It's an outline application, which means that all detailed matters, except for accesses, are reserved for future consideration. It's a residential-led scheme up to 900 houses. It includes a retention of employment and other uses, the provision of a primary school, a neighbourhood centre, which includes a convenience store and a community hall, and 2 new accesses from the A4042 and Old Abergavenny Road. And this application has been supported by a full environmental impact assessment. Just to go through the background, the application has been in a long time. It was submitted in June 2017, along with a listed building application. Planning Committee held its first site visit on the 23rd of July 2019. The application was reported to Planning Committee on the 23rd of July 2020, and members resolved to approve it subject to a Section 106 agreement. Now, the Section 106 agreement was very slow to progress, mainly because of the COVID pandemic. But in the meantime, national policies changed, and new guidance was published on that. And NRW, National Resources Wales, published advice regarding phosphorus-sensitive special areas of conservation, which is to do with rivers in Wales. And as a result of that, we've carried out an impact assessment, which is included as Appendix 1 to this report. Also significantly, the scheme that was before members back in July 2020 was amended in July 2022, and I'll go through the amendments with you a little later. There was no changes to the listed building application, and then most recently, this planning committee, the members visited the site on the 17th of January 23. Just to give you the wider context, in our current local development plan, we've allocated a large area, a strategic action area, and the application in front of you forms part of that area, but only about 2/3. The rest of the area hasn't come forward. So the application needs to be looked at independently on its own for just 2/3 of the overall strategic action area. This is a photograph, aerial photograph of the site. I hope you can see my mouse pointer. This area here to the south is the former Park Davis employment site. Most of the buildings have been removed on that site. And then in the northern area, you've got this, which is the old Nyland Spinners building. That's a Grade 2 listed building. And then the rest of the site is Mamilard Park Estates. And on the left-hand side, there's some photographs showing Mamilard Park Estates offices, the tower to the listed building. There's an existing water container, and then the Park Davis buildings. And then a photograph at the bottom just showing it from a remote position. Here's some wider views into the site. I don't know whether you can make them out, but this is looked at from the southern, it's taken from the southern part of the site, and you can just about make out the Park Davis buildings here, and then the Nyland Spinners building and Mamilard Park Estates here. The second photograph is taken the other side, to the back of the site, from the back of the site, near the edge of the Brecon Beacons National Park. And again, you can see the Nyland Spinners building and Mumiled Park Estates on the left, and the former Park Davis buildings on the right. And then this is a wider photograph, again taken from the Brecon Beacons National Park, and again showing the buildings in the distance. This is the previous master plan. This is the master plan that was taken to Planning Committee in 2020. I'll just go through that with you so that I can show you the differences with the current scheme. Starting from the Park Davis site, it was originally proposed to access the site via a roundabout off the A4042. And then there was a mound in the western part of this area of the site that was originally proposed to be removed and developed with housing. This is the link road which connects the two parts of the site. This area is the listed building, the old Nyland Spinners building, and it was proposed to have a neighbourhood centre in the left-hand side of that building. And then just to the south of it, there's a sports pitch with changing rooms within the listed building. And then further north, the pink area is the proposed primary school site. Okay, just to highlight the main changes to the scheme, this is all documented in the report, but probably the biggest changes were a new, replacing the roundabout on the A4042 with a relocated traffic light junction further north, the relocation of the primary school further north, the relocation of the neighbourhood centre, and I'll explain all this in the next plan, the relocation of the community hall, and the retention of the mound on the former Park Davis site, and the reduction and alteration of the residential footprint to accommodate the above-mentioned alterations. So this is now the plan that is in front of members today. This is a master plan. It is indicative, but this is the plan that's been negotiated over the last few years. Starting from the bottom again, the old Park Davis site. Instead of the roundabout junction, it is a traffic light controlled junction pushed further north, and you can see it where that red arrow is, and that really resembles the existing site access into the Park Davis site. The mound is now not going to be developed, it's going to be retained, but used as a park and a recreation area. Going upwards into the second part of the site, you'll note that the playing field is still there, the changing rooms are still within the listed building, but there's a smaller area in the one side of the listed building that would be part of the neighbourhood centre, but the majority of uses within the neighbourhood centre will be in now Monmouth House, and that will house uses such as retail, cafe, restaurant type uses and leisure uses. And then finally the school, the pink area here shows the school pushed further north in the site, which is actually a better position because that allows this area here to be created into a square, forming a bit of a hub of activities. And these are the two plans next to each other. Again, you can see, hopefully, this illustrates the difference. The mound, previously going to be developed, is now going to be parkland. The neighbourhood centre now removed from the listed building into Monmouth House, but a small part retained. And then the school pushed further north. This is the new access. It is a little bit complicated, but this is the existing access into the Park Davis site, and the proposal is to create a crossroads junction which is controlled by traffic lights. You'll see that in this position, the bottom right-hand corner of the plan, there are existing residential properties very close to this junction. The original roundabout junction was further away, but these residential properties are very close. And you will notice that we are suggesting conditions, I think it's condition 17, which is requesting a further noise survey to make sure that any noise is properly mitigated on those properties. And the second access into the site is from Old Abergavenny Road to the top end of the Mymylid Park Estates offices. This is an indicative phasing plan. It shows that the Park Davis site and part of the link in between would be developed first, but also early in the scheme, as part of phase 1, the school would also be commenced and completed. And then the yellow area to the north, this is the second phase, where the neighbourhood centre, the pitch, the school and the space around the school would be developed. Now, we would look for a more detailed phasing plan that shows all those uses and when they would come forward, which would also be triggered within the Section 106 agreement. So when these uses come forward, will be regulated within the agreement. This is a demolition plan showing the buildings to be demolished, and you'll note in the southern area, all the old Park Davis buildings will be demolished. The larger yellow square in the centre of the site is the listed building, but there's demolition planned here as well. About 40% of the listed building would be demolished. Quite a lot of that is the modern additions to the listed building, which we're quite happy with. The bit on the end of the listed building is the original part of the listed building, and about 17% of that listed building is to be demolished. Now, that needed proper justification, and that justification is within the report and also in the separate listed building consent application. This is a green infrastructure plan. This shows that a lot of the vegetation on site would be retained. In particular, there are 2 areas of ancient woodland where I'm indicating there on the site and down the bottom end of the site. These would need to be retained and protected with buffers between the residential development and the woodland. This is a density plan which basically shows a lighter blue area in the south, which will be a lower density, but the areas in the north will be a higher density. And so it ranges from 30 to 40 dwellings per hectare up to 45 to 60 dwellings per hectare. This is a plan showing the heights across the site. The deeper yellow areas are the 2-storey elements, and as you can see, the lower parts are in the south of the site and around the school. The orange areas are up to 13 metres, which is up to 3 stories in height, and there's 2 areas in the southern section of the site and around the listed building and parts of the school. And then obviously the listed building itself, right next to the listed building, this would be up to 3 to 4 stories in height. There's just some indicative illustrations here of how the scheme could look. This is not something that's before you this afternoon. This is something that the developer has provided to show what could happen. So I'll just run you through these indicative drawings. This one shows the school. It shows a school to the southern end of the school site with a pitch, with a multi-use games area. And this is an idea of what it could look like. This is Monmouth House, which would be where the main neighbourhood centre would be, and this is shown as community centre, cafe, convenience store and other uses. This is the square that I talked about alongside the school. So that, again, just an illustration of what that could look like. And then some pictures of houses. This is the mound that I referred to on the Park Davis site. This is, again, just an illustration. Not the details of this would have to be dealt with at a later stage, but it does show the gradients up to this area where the houses would be overlooking it and the area that would be involved. And this is a plan just showing opportunities for active travel, so cycleways and footpaths that can permeate the site from all around. And the final thing to let you know is the Section 106 agreement. We've included heads of terms within this application and within the report. I'll just briefly go through them with you. The listed building, there's up to £800,000 worth of key enhancements to that building that will improve the usage of it and free up underutilised areas. Affordable housing would be 15% of the total number of dwellings. The primary school would be done in 2 stages, initially a 210-place school, leading eventually to a 315-place school. The neighbourhood centre, approximately 0.24 hectares, and this would be provided at Monmouth House and part of the listed building. Children's play, there would be 2 local areas of play, locally equipped areas of play, 1 larger neighbourhood equipped area of play, and 1 other local area of play within the site. And details of all that would need to be done at the reserve matters stage. Adult recreation, there's 1 grass pitch and a gym trail to be included on the site. The community hall needs to be included within the neighbourhood centre. And in terms of active travel, there's a £2 million contribution from the developer for active travel around the site. There's a 3-year bus subsidy and bus sheltered. So we are looking to get buses into this site. To do that, because it takes a while for the development to be built, the applicant is providing £500,000 so that the council can encourage buses to go to that site, and eventually it would become self-sustaining. Because the school wouldn't be available from day 1, there would need to be children bused to other schools in the borough, and so there's a contribution of £514,000 to allow this busing of children for as long as necessary. In terms of wider trunk road improvements, £150,000 is being provided to look at initiatives, and that's going to be provided to Welsh Government. There's also the provision of access to the adjoining land. Now, when I mentioned right up front that there was a larger allocation, and one of the things that we don't want to do is landlock that site in case it ever comes forward in the future. So we would be making sure that there's an access to that site if it ever was to be developed. And finally, the viability assessment that was done, the viability assessment basically being whether the scheme stacks up. This was done on the basis of 824 housing units. The application, as you know, is up to 900 units, and there needs to be built into this an overage so that anything more than 824 being proposed on the site, there would be additional contributions required at that stage. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members.
Thank you, Richard. Geraint, I can only see one hand up. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to ask a question too?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Carl Gordon would like to ask a question, please.
Right. We'll have Councillor Gordon first then.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got several questions as it happens. I don't know if you want me to ask them all in one go or ask them piecemeal. It's up to you.
Well, see what Richard prefers.
All in one go, if you like. I'll do my best.
Okay. I was one of the members of the planning committee who carried out the site visit in January. Very informative. And I feel I may have asked these questions to you or planning colleagues already, but I just want clarification. I want it to on the record, if you like. The mound isn't a naturally occurring landscape feature. No. And I just wanted to make sure that, and it's quite a large structure. It's quite steep, I think, and I've got some concerns around the fact that it's a former industrial site. So what I'd like some information on is what sort of structural, or do we know what's underneath there? Because if there are, I don't know, chemicals or sort of something a bit dodgy under that mound, it becomes sort of a kids' play area, and we might be storing up trouble. Because, like I said, it's not a mound of earth; it's something more than that. So, have we done any exploratory work on that? Next question. Fantastic that it fits in with placemaking things, and there's community halls and sports and all the rest of it. One of my bugbears, and I asked it on the site visit, was the provision of health facilities, GPs and dentists and all the rest of it. Those kind of services across Torfaen and wider than Torfaen. There's a bit of an existential crisis in there in the provision of GP surgeries and NHS dentists and private dentists. And I wonder what sort of facility there is to make that provision, because there's additional 900 houses going in there. They're going to want those services. And I think if I was using a GP in Pontypool and lived in Pontypool and I already can't get an appointment, if we didn't have some sort of GP facility in or near the Mamilid site, I'd be pretty miffed. That provision doesn't exist. And I know that's not necessarily a matter that we can cater for. That might be more down to the Aaron Bevan Health Trust, but I'd want some information on how far along we are in talks around that, how likely it is, and all the rest of it. You've answered my social housing percentage question. The last one, thankfully, is the school transportation. There's 514,000, presumably it's part of the 106 money, for a provision to be children to be bused to schools in the local area. Again, capacity issues I'm worried about. Why 9 years? Is that a worst case scenario? Because if they're building the houses, they better build the school at the same time, to be honest, in my opinion. That's it for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, okay. The mound, first of all, I believe some work has been done on it, but we've got conditions. There's almost 60 conditions that we've got here. And because we haven't got details of the mound yet, there's going to be conditions that will be imposed, that contamination surveys, ground investigation works need to be done. And then that will form a report with mitigation as how the contamination can be dealt with if it's there, and then that we'll get the details of the play area. So that is covered in the report, and we've been liaising with NRW and our public health team on that as well. So they will be looking at the results of all of that when it comes in. With the health facilities, really good question. This goes right back to the beginning of the local development plan process. And this whole site was originally planned as 1,700 houses. We consulted with the health boards at that time in terms of that, because all our strategic sites were laid out then, and this plan is now what we're implementing. Things have been slow coming through, but they are coming through now. What we can do is make sure that there are facilities available for people wanting to go to the site. We're going to get a convenience store on the site. Other units will be available, but we can't make people come. All we can do is make sure that there's facilities there that are properly serviced and available. Doctors, dentists need critical mass. And so what we are hoping is that because there are 900 houses being, up to 900 being built here, because of all the employment uses that are already here, that this will be attractive for people to relocate. But you're right, it's really the health board that would need to sort that out. And the consultation started really when the local development plan started. And then the third, the school transportation. There will be a brand new school on the site. The trigger is likely to be started at 150 houses and then completed at 225 houses. So it's quite early on in the process. But up to the time that it's complete, there may well be children on the site that haven't got a school to go to because it won't be built. Those children need to be bused elsewhere. We've been working with our education colleagues on that to make sure that there are facilities elsewhere, and there are spaces. The reason for the 9 years is that where pupils are bused to a particular school, even though the new school might be built and is available to receive people, if children have been already going to another school, parental choice means that they can keep them going there. So the period of 9 years takes care of anybody that wants to continue going for the length of time that they're in that school. The hope is that they want to come to the new school, but because of parental choice, we can't guarantee it. So the money and the busing is available for that period of time. Was that okay? Have I covered?
Yeah, that's more than usual. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Is it Mia's hand? I can see her. Maya?
No, I don't think it is.
No.
Did you want to come in relation to Councillor Gordon's questions?
No, thank you, Chair.
Oh.
No, I think it's the corporate diary hand you can see, Chair, because Councillor David Williams has also got a question in the chamber.
Oh, right. We'll take two from the list then that I've got here. Councillor Steve Evans, would you like to ask your question now?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've got three quick ones. Is there any historical covenants on this ground? Because we are now moving the school and the other community building to different areas because they're now changing the use of it. The second thing is because we're moving these different things, school and the community centre, what impact will it have on our biodiversity from the original statement? And on the third one, what's our tree strategy? Because there seem to be conflicting interests in some of the reports and with the beacons. What's happening with the trees? Where's the trees going? What's staying? You know, what's our tree strategy really? Because if we're moving stuff, then it is going to have an impact on some of our trees.
Shall I come in there, Chair?
Yes, please.
Yeah, first of all, in terms of historical covenants, I'm not sure what you mean by those, whether you mean legal interests on the site or legal covenants on the site. There's nothing from a planning point of view that would prejudice the scheme, the amended scheme, coming forward on site. Any legal covenants that might be there, we wouldn't be aware of and wouldn't be involved in. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, I'm more interested, because it's been an industrial site, you're now changing the use.
Yeah.
Particularly for the school use. Sometimes there are covenants on, historical covenants, that it can only be used for recreational, or, you know, you're now putting a school on it, you're now changing the use. So that's the reason I'm asking about the covenant.
Yes, so the answer to that really is that would be a legal question for the owners of the land to work out themselves and to sort out, not something that planning would be involved in. So the owners would need to be able to implement the scheme, and any covenants that may be on the site, they would be responsible for getting them sorted, really. I think the second question on biodiversity, because there was a change in the scheme and things have been shuffled around, new surveys have had to be done. We needed more information on the environmental impact assessment. That's all come through. That's all been advertised and consulted on. But apart from that, because we don't have the detailed layout yet, more survey work, and if you look at the conditions, there's quite a lot of conditions regarding biodiversity and more surveys that would be required. So we've got that covered really by conditions before any work takes place on site. And then in terms of the tree strategy, I showed you a plan showing the green infrastructure that will be kept on the site. The ancient woodlands can't be touched anyway, and we'd be looking very carefully at how they're going to buffer those with the housing. But because we haven't got a detailed layout, as I pointed out, it'll be done in phases. And when we get the phases in, all the details of landscaping for that phase would have to come in as part of that proposal, and that would be something that we'd be presented to committee at a later date. Is that okay?
If I just come back in quickly, yeah. Chair. Yeah. The only reason I'm asking about the biodiversity and the trees, you now alter the setup. My concern was, by the alterations, would there be less mitigation than on the new scheme, so therefore we would lose stuff? That was my concern. You know, we'd be losing more than we originally started with. So that's why I raised that particular question.
We've looked at that. We don't think that there's any significant loss of landscaping on the site that can't be mitigated for. One of the good things, I suppose, is the mound is being kept, and that gives us opportunities for further landscaping as well. But really, until you get the detailed layouts, you don't really know how it's all going to be impacted. So it's that stage, really, that we'd bring that to members, obviously, to let them know each phase and what trees are coming out, what new trees are being planted. But overall, in principle, we're okay with the scheme.
Oh, right, thank you, Richard. I'll take Councillor Alfie Best's question next.
Thank you. My first question is about the water tower. I mentioned it at the visit, which was really helpful, but I didn't get an answer on what exactly is happening with the water tower. I know it's mentioned in the report as a bat habitat potentially, but a little bit more information on that would be helpful. And secondly, there's a point about sewage. Sewage treatment. Welsh Water say in the report that they have no issues with sewage treatment. So, are we confident that the capacity of the existing sewer is sufficient, and are we confident of Welsh Water's capacity to treat the water at Pontia, minimising overspills into the river?
Thank you. Can you answer that, please, Richard?
Yes, of course. First one, in terms of the water tower, we did check with the applicant on that. It's not being used at the moment, as we understand, and there's no plans to use it in the future. So there isn't a proposal on that water tower at the moment. In terms of the sewage treatment, yes, you're quite right. We consulted with Welsh Water on that. Welsh Water felt that because originally the Park Davis buildings were quite substantial, so there was a lot of sewerage going to the treatment stations from there, that this development is not going to make a significant difference on that, and therefore they haven't objected to it. Full details of that, however, will need to be provided at the reserved matters detailed stages. So we will be consulting Welsh Water on the details when they come in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I'll take Councillor David Williams's question now.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a couple of observations as much as questions. I think obviously it's very pleasing to see in a development of this size how more recent planning requirements have been taken into account, like active travel, the provision of allotments, the provision of cycle parking, etc. I suppose the first question I had was that there was mention about the phosphorus into the rivers, and I think you indicated that there'd been a study, but is there planned to be a further study as the work goes forward? That's the first point. And the second one was at 7.2, with responses to the amended scheme, whether there were any further comments. I suppose it's trying to understand a little bit as to what were perhaps original comments that were made, and then perhaps later comments in the light of subsequent changes to the planning. I don't know whether you can indicate that. And then finally, whether there have been additional ones subsequent to this revision.
Can you answer that, please, Richard?
Yeah, the phosphates issue is quite a new thing in planning, and we've struggled to get proper guidance on this. It's been quite a difficult one to sort out. We did work very closely with NRW on this. We worked very closely with our biodiversity officer. The applicant produced quite a lot of information for us to look at, and our requirement was to do an impact assessment on those rivers. That's taken into account the treatment at Pontia Works as well. So appended to this report is a full assessment that was done internally by us that concluded that there was no significant impact. So as far as we are concerned, and NRW has seen that as well, as far as we are concerned, we've done all that work necessary, so there's no further work to do on the phosphates issue. The sewerage issue is really more to do with how will the sewerage be disposed of, where will all the pipes be, what they'll connect into, and all those details would be dealt with at a later stage. In terms of the comments, they're set out in the report. There's quite a lot of them, but we tried to set it out so that there was the initial comments on the original scheme, and then the subsequent comments are there. I wouldn't be able to answer all of that. I wouldn't be able to sort of, because they're all documented in the report, I wouldn't be able to remember them all. But probably the most significant that I can see is the shift of the access from a roundabout location further north, nearer this little group of houses, and there have been objections with regard to that. I mentioned the condition there about the noise survey that needs to be done and mitigation. The developer will be responsible for any mitigation for that. And obviously it's Welsh Government that control trunk roads. So we've been in full liaison with them, and they're fully supportive of the proposal. But apart from that, the shifting of the school, there was general consensus that was a good thing because it was closer to the boundaries and probably better screened, further away from the listed building. So in terms of the setting of the listed building, that would be better. And then I think in terms of the mound, again, retaining the mound gave a little bit more screening from the Brecon Beacon side of the site. So that was a sort of plus point as well. In terms of any other detrimental comments made, I can't think of any more except for that, the relocation of the access. Okay.
Right, thank you. I'll take Janet Jones's question. Janet?
Thank you, Chair. Quite a few of the questions I've written down have already been answered. But Richard, could you tell us about the type of materials yet that developers will be used? And in view that we are at climate change, if they're going to use solar panels, or it is too early to discuss as yet?
Yeah, I mentioned before that there's been quite a significant policy shift in planning, and renewable energy, climate change is all top of the agenda. Because this is just an outline application, in principle, the details of all of that will be done at the next stage. And yes, we would be actively promoting sustainable materials, sustainable energy on this site. You may notice one of the conditions is to explore a heat network for the site. That doesn't mean they have to provide one, it just means that they need to look at it and look at all the sustainable options that they may have, actually. But yeah, that would be done at the detailed stage, which will
Thank you, Richard. I'm glad about that. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. And I've got Councillor Stuart Ashley next.
Yeah, a lot of questions have been asked. The thing I'm picking up, obviously, I did the 2020. The interesting one that's because of the pandemic, the use of the canal as a route into Pontypool, which it's a leisure route as well. Obviously, it connects with this site via the Star Inn. I'm not sure where else they plan to come from that route. Obviously, the connectivity for walking, cycling, any other form of transport. I mean, scooters and various things. If you look at the way South Sebastopol's developed, there's a lot with these new estates. There's a lot of people that live on these sort of estates would kind of use different ways. Going from places got roundabouts to people that want to access places, walking, running, all that sort of thing. I'm getting the hint. It was saying in the report about how people would connect. Certainly, it's going to tank the canal if they use the canal to connect route. It's already been used. Is that what plans have we got with the 106 money? The other thing is the connectivity to the new railway station, and that way, I'm a bit worried about the focus that everybody has to get into this place, either by available public transport. Obviously, new public transport is important. The other bus service that goes through this site is obviously stuff that goes to Usk or stuff that goes to Abergavenny, where they reroute the Abergavenny bus through the site, which would be an obvious thing to look at, or the Usk buses, because they at the moment go down the main road. It's a horror to cycle that main road, I can assure you. I've done it a few times when I was able to. That's one set of questions. If you've got a new community, I mean, it's a very similar situation to what's developing, as I said, with South Sebastopol. life of town on a new village or a new community on a roundabout, which you did allude to, how that develops and how it links into existing communities. Obviously, Pontypool in one area and Little Mill in the other. I think have we sort of looked at how that works, and obviously the relationship with the railway station, because a lot of those people wanted to go to work. That's one thing. What you said about the phosphorus and the runoff from the SUDS type setup, again, similar to some respects to South Sebastopol. The Bethan Brook is the thing that runs through at the bottom of this, because that runs, if you look on the map, goes to us, doesn't it? So I just wondered what that relationship is like with that ecology. And I take looking at there's a lot of ecology coming down off the Brecon Beacons on this particular site. We don't look at the landscape, but Brecon Beacons certainly do. And I'm glad to see that that's in there. There's three things there to comment on: drainage, accessibility via active landscape, and the site itself, because it is an attractive site. People are going to want to live there because of that. I do think, having seen it, and then they've got the most amazing building. I just wonder what they're going to do with the rest of that huge building there, which I think we were impressed with when we walked around it on a summer's day. I wasn't able to do it the last visit. Could you comment on that, please?
I'll try.
I think. Sorry about the building. It's the most impressive building I've ever seen.
I think your first question really was all about active travel and public transport. I agree this is one of the most important themes on this site. We are treating this as a sustainable urban village. Yeah. You talked about integration and whatnot, but I think we can all see, and you saw from the photograph, that this isn't connected really to existing communities. It's on its own. It's an industrial area. And what is being proposed here is a mixed-use development that needs to be sustainable. And I think we're aware, obviously, that the Park and Ride is due to be completed in July of this year. The £2 million contribution from the developer is really going to be paid to the council for the council to use to improve the active travel to this site. So it's part of the Sustrans route as well. So cycleways will be going past this site. And I think that I've been talking to the active travel officer for Torfaen in terms of how that money can be spent. There are no plans yet. There's tentative plans. But in terms of what we can do with that going forward, I don't have all the details of that. But I showed you a plan that showed all the connections outside the site. So the developer will be responsible for active travel within the site. And then that £2 million will be spent on active travel outside the site. And one thing that will be looked at is the connection with the Park and Ride. So sustainability...
Can I respond to that, if I may? We just done a scrutiny on active travel, and I like what you're saying on that, because one of the things is it has to be done properly. It's certainly something that's isolated to this. It needs a good job, 3 meters. I'm somewhat cynical on this, because if it's small, narrow on the side of the road, things, it needs a really good job done on this. Do you think there's scope for doing that?
I think that the developer has indicated that he would be happy to engage in discussions on the Sustrans route. Obviously, it's that you're right, that there needs to be a critical width there to make that work properly, and that may involve land that's privately owned. So the money, the £2 million, will be very helpful to try and deal with that. But also land ownership is an issue that we need to get over. But as I say, I've had numerous talks with the active travel officer, and he's certainly looking at all the different opportunities that we can use this money for. You mentioned, I think, about just to conclude on that, that we knew, because this was quite a remote site, that active travel, sustainability was going to be one of the most important issues on this site. And we have, if you look at the conditions and the Section 106, I think that we've done, our best, really, to make sure that that is very high on the agenda, and we will follow that through into all the detailed applications as well. I think you mentioned phosphates, which are really, I think, dealt with. It's fairly new to the planning world. Nobody really knows. We haven't had really good guidance on that yet, but we have had information that we've used to produce an impact assessment that our ecologist has done, and that's appended to the report. So we've discharged our functions in terms of phosphates for this site. And I think the last question, you were talking about what happens to the listed building. Well, because the listed building at the moment, what we are looking for as part of the Section 106 agreement is certain works to be done to the listed building. We call them enhancement works, which basically involve removing old machinery, removing old machinery and furniture possibly, and putting in a lift as well. And all of that helps to open up the building. So there's lots of the building that's just inaccessible at the moment. There are some industrial and employment uses in the building. That £800,000 is there to try and open it up as far as possible, to give it more of a life going forward. So that we don't know exactly what will happen to the listed building, but this is providing an opportunity for it to be utilised, hopefully, to its capacity.
Can I come back again, Chair? That building was most of a modernist building, which it is, Bauhausian, I would have said. It's actually it's one of the most inspiring buildings I've been. I know various people have worked in that building or worked around it, the chair being one of them. And I wasn't expecting it to be there, to be honest. It's an interesting example of something being in our countryside. So it's quite surprising, wasn't it? Someone said it was the biggest graded building in Wales. So it's impressive, actually. So I would support this application on that very thing. I just think this has to be a quality thing. It's something we've talked about for a long time.
Right, thank you, Councillor Ashley. And I can see a hand up. Is either Councillor Gordon or Councillor Williams? Yeah. Would you like to come in now?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Williams would like to come in.
Yes, it's a very short question. Just basically, obviously, I noted at the beginning of the report concern from the consultants for the Pontypool and Clyther estates indicating they felt the council could lawfully approve in its current form. I just wanted to check if you felt that there was still a risk of challenge or whether this has been satisfactorily addressed.
Yeah, what I would say, there's always a risk of challenge with any planning decision that's been made. So we're very conscious of that. We've gone through all the issues that have been raised. We are satisfied that we've complied with legislation. We're also satisfied that although the application is 6 years old, there's still a duty on us to determine the application. And part of the reason it's 6 years old, well, COVID didn't help in terms of that, but there's been an awful lot of negotiation on this application as well, a lot of interaction to get us to this stage, really. And because of the amendments, that meant more information coming in. So it took a long time to do, but there's no legal reason why we can't now determine the application. So we feel we've gone as far as we can, but I can't say that there's no risk because there's always a risk.
Thank you. That's a very helpful response.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley, you want to come in?
After what Richard's just said, I'd like to move it, if I may, please.
Yes, I can't see any other hands up for questions. Right. Is there a seconder?
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you. Right, Garen?
I'd like to commend the officers for the amount of work, because we've been at this one a long time.
Yes, it is.
And I'm satisfied that they've looked at it, and what Richard's qualified, and I certainly am, that there's been an awful lot of work and negotiation gone into this one.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, the report we've had to read, it's enormous and it goes into great detail. You're right there. Right, we've had a proposal and it's been seconded. So, Geraint, could you please ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they are for, against or are abstaining.
Yes, no problem, Chair. If I can start with Councillor Ashley.
For.
Councillor Best.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Gordon.
For.
Councillor Hawler.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Yourself, Chair.
For.
Councillor Slade.
For.
And Councillor Williams.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So this application has been approved. Right, we'll move on to the next one. Agenda item 5, planning application 23/P/0104/FUL, proposed partial conversion of public toilets, use class sui generis to cafe/restaurant, use class A3, extension to front, side and rear, and associated external alterations, including replacement steps and walls between the Italian Gardens and listed Memorial Gate. So can I ask Mia McAndrew, Senior Planner, to present the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Will that summarise the proposal? It's a council application that forms part of the Levelling Up Fund scheme. We considered the application for the renovation to the car park last month. Before presenting this application, I just wanted to clarify, in the report, the consultation section says that the Glamorgan Gwent Archaeological Trust didn't respond, but then the assessment does explain their comments. They did comment. The assessment explains their position and they don't have any objections. Also, since the report was published, we've now received comments from the forward planning team. They have raised concerns with the sequential test that was undertaken because there'd be a commercial development provided outside the town centre boundary in Pontypool. But ultimately, they don't have any objections to the proposals, so it doesn't change the outcome of the report in any way. So this is the application site. It's the public convenience on Hanbury Road. These satellite images show the site in context, so maybe you can see my mouse there. It's on the western side of the Italian Gardens front in Hanbury Road. It's opposite St James's Church and also adjacent to the Civic Centre. And the Grade 2 listed War Memorial Gates are to the north. Here are some photos of the site. This is the front from Hanbury Road. So this is where the public toilets are provided with a pedestrian access. And then this is the rear of the building. So it's multi-level. The lower ground is access from the Italian Gardens. There's some steps and it's just to a store or plant room. Here are some photos of the site in the wider context in the Italian Gardens. And this diagram shows the context of the site and designations on and around the site. So the green area that's highlighted is the Pontypool Conservation Area. The red dots are the historic environment records designated by the Glamorgan Gwent Archaeological Trust. So that's the War Memorial Gates and the Civic Centre. We've got listed buildings, so the yellow squares. So again, the gates and the Civic Centre, and also St James's Church, the library to the north, and other further away. And then the blue line is the town centre boundary established in our local development plan, and the site is just outside this boundary. The purple area on the diagram on the left shows the CADU registered historic park and garden. The Italian Gardens actually fall outside that boundary, but they are within its setting. And then the red areas on this diagram show the sinks, so the sites of importance for nature conservation around the site. So this shows the existing and proposed lower floor plans. So at the moment, it is literally just a storeroom at the back. There's access from steps from the Italian Gardens. And this proposed floor plan, it would be the lower ground of the cafe restaurant. So you can, here would be a serving hatch to an outdoor seating area that would be in the Italian Gardens. And there's toilets that would be provided for the cafe. And there's a lift here. And you can see here is all the outdoor seating. And then this would be other rooms associated with the cafe restaurant. And here are the existing and proposed upper floor. So here you can see that at the moment it is just the public toilets and a store. And so there's just a partial change of use. So this front section that projects from the building here would be extended by about ½ a metre to the front, and they provide 2 accessible public toilets. And then the upper floor would be converted for the cafe restaurant, and then there would be a side extension, 2-storey, and there would be part of the wall along Hanbury Road would be removed to provide this paved area that would provide access to one of the toilets and bin storage that's internal. And then there would be a 2-storey extension to the rear as well, and then a first floor projection that would be in this sort of semicircle shape that would be the dining area for the cafe restaurant. So here are the comparisons of the existing and proposed front elevation drawings. You can see here this is the new side extension. The columns on the front elevation would be retained, and all of this would be replaced with glazing then that would provide views right through the building, out through the glass extension to the rear. We've worked with the applicant and their agent to try and retain as many features, so we'd be retaining the panels on the front elevations and retaining the glass block windows. This is the existing and proposed rear elevations. So most prominent here is that first floor extension that would project out for the dining area. It would be supported by 3 posts, and then there would be steel beams that would have a tree appearance. The idea behind it is to reflect the trees in the surrounding park. And you can see underneath here, there are the serving hatch and doors that provide access to the seating area at the level of the Italian Gardens. Here are the existing and proposed side elevations. So plant is proposed on the roof. It would be on both the proposed flat roof and the existing rear roof face. It's for air conditioning and ventilation. And they've proposed a plant screen that would hide it. And the plant screen wouldn't be highly visible. Whilst on that image it does look it, but if you see on the plan it would be set right back and set in. But they are proposing a polished mirror finish, because in the hopes that it would reflect the sky. But we do have concerns, and the Heritage Officer has concerns, that it may actually just reflect the roof and could cause glare. Yes. So there would be a condition that would require details of the plant screen. Here's some 3D visuals of the building. So you can see here they're proposing wood doors and windows on the front elevation, which is okay. We don't have issues with that, but we don't have any details of the what the finish would look like. We haven't received any samples. There will be a condition regarding that. And here's some 3D visuals of it from the side and rear. Part of the proposals, which is also covered by a listed building consent application, which will follow on the agenda, but does also require full planning consent because of all the structural works. And they're going to be replacing these steps to the north of the building that are connected to the listed war memorial gates and connect the gates down to the Italian Gardens. At the moment, these steps are quite awkward, steep steps, and they'd be looking to move them out of the way to accommodate that rear extension, but also improve them whilst doing it. So the proposal is here. You can see the red area here shows the new footprint of the steps and pathway. And then these sections show the current gradient of the land and how it would change. and here is a useful section of the proposed steps and walls. There will be stone retaining walls for the steps, and you can see the relationship then with the existing piers, where they'd be set away so as not to change them. They are proposing railings, or showing them on the plans, along the whole of the walls, on both sides of the steps. And we do have concerns about how in keeping that would appear. It would have quite a utilitarian appearance. We have very limited detail about it. So we've suggested a condition from the Heritage Officer where it will prohibit the installation of any railings until we have details that have been approved first. And here's some useful 3D visuals of the proposed steps and wall. There is a tree, a cypress tree, next to the steps, and it is proposed to be retained, and the steps would just be slightly altered at the end to curve around the tree. We've been advised that due to the unusual gradient of the land, that the roots would be lower and shouldn't be harmed during the construction works, but to make sure that the tree would be protected, there would be a condition for a construction method statement that would need to be reviewed by our tree officer. To accommodate the proposed side and rear extensions, they've proposed to remove 2 cypress trees that are in the Italian gardens that are shown in this photo. Obviously, the loss of any tree is discouraged, and there's concerns about the visual impact of this on the street and also the ecological impact of this. To mitigate this, there's a landscaping scheme has been submitted, and it proposes 2 new trees that would be lime trees. One would be to the south of the new extension here, and one would be to the north here. And they're also proposing landscaping throughout these areas with ferns and perennials and shrubs. We've only received sort of generalised areas for those, so there is a condition for detailed landscaping scheme. To provide an enhancement beyond those 2 trees, they are proposing to extend the orchard that's just across the bridge in the Pontypool Park. So you can see here is the Italian gardens, and then here is the existing orchard, and then they're proposing an extension of that here, and you can see there would be 10 trees planted. It would be a mix of heritage fruit trees. You can see the list here. It would be plum, apple, cherry, and pear trees. And the ecology, conservation, landscape and tree officers are all satisfied with this approach. There is a sculpture in the Italian gardens to the rear of the building. We haven't received any details about that, so there's a condition that requires details of its retention and relocation. So in conclusion, the development wouldn't be fully policy compliant because there would be the provision of a commercial use outside the town centre boundary, but the developer has provided justification for this, or the applicant, sorry, has provided justification for this. It is a sustainable location, only 16 metres outside the boundary, and they'd have the same access to active travel and public transport options. It forms part of the Levelling Up Fund scheme, which is significant investment to Pontypool and is trying to enhance the nighttime economy in Pontypool and provide jobs. The Future Wales encourages the public sector to take leadership and encourage growth in Pontypool. Pontypool has been identified as in an area of growth in the Future Wales plan. And also there's policies that support proposals that would encourage tourism in Pontypool Park. And then finally, this is a key location to connect the town centre to the park. The hope is that it would encourage all the visitors to the park to connect up to the cafe and increase footfall in the town centre. So there's no objections from any consultees. There's suggested conditions from the Heritage, Landscape, Ecology and Highways officers, and along with Welsh Water, because we need details of a connection to the public sewer and also a diversion. But in conclusion, we think the proposals are acceptable and we recommend that consent be granted.
Thank you, Mia. That was very comprehensive. I've got two hands up. Councillor Steve Evans, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. You know, I'm not against the idea, but looking on your photos, there's a lot of steps, but I didn't see a lot of ramps for people with disabilities, wheelchairs and pushchairs. Can anybody explain why? Because shouldn't it be, you know, equal?
Yeah. Thank you.
Mia, can you come in, please?
Yeah, thank you. It's not on my photos, but there's two accesses from the Italian Gardens up to the steps. And at the moment, there's sort of these awkward slopes and steps on the side that would be changed. That's part of the proposals. Yeah. But on the other side, there is an existing ramp. So at the moment, it's not really the accessible option either. It's the other side that would be used as a more accessible option.
Yeah, they just on the diagram, all you could see was steps. You couldn't see. And I thought, well, surely that can't be right.
Are you satisfied, Steve, with the answer? Okay, then. Right, we'll have Councillor Alfie Best now with his question.
Sorry. I know it's been the plan all along and it's been previously stated, but it seems to be missed a lot in the press and in social media. So just for the record, can you confirm that, and I know it's in the report, but can you confirm that there is the retention of public toilets in Pontypool Town?
Yes, thank you. It's the partial conversion of the toilets. So obviously there's a lot more toilets there at present, but there will be 2 accessible public toilets retained there. There would also be toilets served in the cafe, but it would be to the business's discretion into whether they want to share that with the public. Another consideration, whilst not part of this application, is that we did approve, as part of the wider Levelling Up Fund scheme, 10 new toilets to be provided at the car park refurbishment just around the corner.
Thank you. I just know there's a lot of worry on online about having no toilets in Pontypool, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Geraint, could you tell me who wants to ask a question in the chamber, please?
Yes, it's Councillor David Williams, Chair.
Yeah, will you come in now, Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Chair. Well, Alfie's asked one of the things I was going to ask about, and I didn't think it was necessarily appropriate that you'd have checked the footfall into the toilets, but it's helpful to know that you've got that mitigation in place and the accessible toilets. The question I had, and it's also pleasing to note that the mitigation works that have been done, obviously losing 2 cypress trees, gaining 2 lime trees, etc. I think it's been done in a very constructive way and very clear-cut. I echo the points that Councillor Evans makes, but obviously you've got access from the pavement end as well, haven't you, in terms of level access. But my primary concern was about the loading to the cafe, because I noted there was a proposal for delivery or collection stopping between 8 and 6, I think it was. So I just wondered how that had been taken forward. Is that something that, because I couldn't see it in the conditions, is that something that is actually a separate issue? I suppose my concern is, I know how busy that road can get, certainly early in the mornings, so if you're going and having extra deliveries, and also perhaps collections of waste, which is perhaps related to that, those were my primary concerns.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was a concern raised by our Highways Officer, Leanne, there, that we explored the potential of adding a lay-by onto the street, but for a variety of reasons we don't think it would be suitable. So the only option is then to prohibit and limit the collection and delivery times. So there is a condition that would say that they couldn't do any deliveries or collections between 8 AM and 6 PM. And there would also be there's a condition for a construction environmental management plan that would manage the roads during the construction period. Okay.
You okay with that?
Sorry, thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Mia. Right, we've got Councillor Stuart Ashley and then Councillor Slade. Councillor Ashley first, please.
Yeah, sure. I'm glad to hear you confirmed that the toilets in the car park. I didn't realise that was that number up there, Lincoln, because the question I'd been asked about the bus drivers, they use that one very much. There also, we had a scrutiny, I think it was 2017, about public toilets. I think Chair remembers that well. The problem we've got, the allocation of toilets, Blaenavon, Pontypool and Cabran, was the public toilet allocation is adequate but not brilliant. And we obviously don't want to lose those. And if you're making sure that we've got them provided in the car park, and we've got some in there, that would seem to be a good idea. And we need to be sure that we have more, not less. If we can make sure, I remember that scrutiny well. It was a point about where toilets were provided. So the linkage of the toilets to this development. I also think this is the Italian Gardens. This was a fine building. So the fact that someone's thought about an alternative use for it and kept some of the provision there, I think is good. You say about there is that road that goes down, slope that goes down there. I've noted that in the past that our vehicles go down there, so I wouldn't really want to be seeing service vehicles going down there. I make sure that doesn't happen. Can you, because you can get vehicles down there. I stand on that bus stop an awful amount of time in the past. I was wanting to make sure that in terms of access, I think I agree with other people on this. You can get down that slope, the one that's on the mount further up there, but it does seem that this is an imaginative use of a building. It's quite a fine building. My only concern is, and I agree with you about those railings, things like that. That building, that toilet is of an Italianate design, if not, and I wouldn't want to lose the look of it. Something we don't talk about on planning committee all that much, but it does. If you look at it, I don't know who designed it. It was probably a pastiche, but it does actually have a somewhat Italianate design, and I'm wondering whether we can. You've been at pains to keep that feel, which was obviously the Italian Gardens had an Italianate design. And if you look at the steps that go down there from War Memorial and the whole feature there, it's painted white. It looks like that. Where possible, if we can keep that look. I'm not so sure about the timber and stuff. I don't know. You guys are in charge of this. I'm suggesting that maybe some features. And I'm not so sure about the mirroring. It's almost stuff that the current king was a bit unsure about in these things. The style of the place. And we're getting something that will be an improvement. I remember the study that was done in opening Pontypool Park up a few years back, and we do need a footfall and somebody to open this area of the thing. I mean, I think this is actually a brilliant idea, in a sense that something to bring the park into the town, which I believe was the whole point of that study done a few years back. As I sat there as a community worker in Centre Pontypool years ago. So this is something that's imaginative. I certainly would support it, but I'm wondering about mixed styles on this building. Could you comment on that, please, if you would?
Mia, could you comment, please?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for that. Thanks, Chair. So the design, the side extension and that initial two-storey, there's a small bit of the two-storey rear extension before that first floor projection. They would both reflect the appearance of the existing building, and then we've been careful throughout the design process to try and retain those features on the front elevation. So there have been improvements made there, so we'd be keeping the columns. Obviously they do need doorways in, so we've accepted that in the first central block of windows, and panelling would be removed and replaced with glazing, but we're keeping the blocks elsewhere, the block windows, and keeping the panelling, and the materials would match. It's only that first floor projection that would have a differing design. And I think that there's a section in the report that provides guidance on approaches to modern design on sort of more traditional buildings, and modern design is okay as long as you sort of do it to a high quality level. And I feel like the sort of semicircular shape of it, and the glazing and the steel beams that look like trees, I feel like they've gone for quite a unique, bold design that would contribute to the character of the building whilst retaining it to the front and sides.
Can I ask a further question, if I may, because it's just occurred to me? Obviously in Cardiff, they have a lot of experience of these outdoor al fresco type things. I'm thinking of Butte Park and that. Bearing in mind this park has a feel to it because it was part of, I believe, I was about to say Butte. It's part of the Hanbury type setup. Have we got any control over if they're having outdoors? We're not going to have a load of plastic chairs down there. I don't know. Have we any control outside what they're going to have in the park itself? You know, in terms of outdoor seating and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's worth me asking that question because I reflect on what they do in the Cardiff parks, and they do like to keep things a bit in, you know, bit in keeping with it as well. So I'm just wondering, as a planning committee, whether we could just say it'd be nice to keep the thing in keeping.
Yeah, Mia will comment now.
Yeah, thank you. So on the proposed floor plans, it does show the outdoor seating area, but it's more of an indicative seating, to be honest. It shows sort of tables with bench-style seats is what you can see on there. But I do think that is indicative, and it would be up to the business really to decide what seating they would put out there. If it would be a more sort of permanent structure, then that could come back to planning. But if it's just, you know, general outdoor seating that restaurants tend to use, then I think that would be beyond our control.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alan Slade, did you have a question?
I put my hand down now. No.
Oh, okay. Thank you. One more. It's Councillor Steve Evans.
Yeah, and I only want to clarify with the change in the front of the building. Did you say you were using wood on some of the front of the building? The only reason I raise that, being a member on the fire authority, that gives me a bit of a concern, particularly if it's round where there might be antisocial behaviour. So it's just something I picked up on. You know, wood's highly flammable. That was the only reason I brought that up.
Okay, I think Mia will come in now and answer your question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, I should just clarify. I did reference timber being used on the front elevation, but it was just for the fenestration, so just for the frames on the windows and doors. I only mentioned it because obviously timber windows and doors are a high quality material, but we were just not entirely sure about the finish and whether that would match the rest of the front elevation. So they did put details of a stain that would have a grey beige colour, but we haven't received any samples of it. So there's a condition that would just require further details so we can consider whether that stain looks okay, or perhaps a painted finish would be better, or perhaps a different colour. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. I'm just concerned more about the fire safety risk, you know.
Thank you, Mia. Right, I can see someone in the chambers got their hands up for a question.
Yes.
Would you like to come in?
It's Councillor Gaynor-James, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just one question. While the works are going on with the cafe and the toilets are out of order, are there temporary toilets going to be set up for members of the public to use? I did hear something at one stage.
To be honest with you, that's really outside. The toilet thing is outside of our remit, really. Obviously the council is owned by the the toilets are owned by the council.
Yeah.
What the plans are to do that temporarily, we don't know. It wouldn't really be something that would be in the planning world. But that doesn't say that we can't ask the question.
Yeah.
So we'd be happy to raise that as part of this with them and feedback to you, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, that's lovely, thanks. I'm really happy with this application. I think it's fabulous for the town. And as I say, the worries for people, because there is going to be toilets in there and more in the Civic. So I'd like to move this application.
Thank you, Gaynor. Is there a seconder?
I'll second it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, back to you now, Geraint. Could you please ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they are for, against or abstaining, please?
Yes, no problem, Chair. If I can start with Councillor Ashley.
For.
Councillor Best.
For.
Councillor Evans. For. Councillor Gordon.
For.
Councillor Hawlett.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Yourself, Chair.
For.
Councillor Slade.
For.
And Councillor Williams.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Yes, unanimous again. So this application has been approved. Thank you. Right, we'll move on. Agenda item 6, planning application 23/P/0106/LBC, proposed improvement to and replacement of existing path and steps between the Italian Gardens and listed Memorial Gate and associated works, including new walls. So can I ask you again, Mia McAndrew, Senior Planner, to present the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So something to note with this application before I present it is that there was originally a tree condition attached, the same one as on the full application that required a construction method statement regarding that tree next to the steps. However, because that doesn't specifically relate to the listed building, which is the subject of this application, that's been removed, but there is still a reference to it in the assessment. So just to clarify that matter. So this application is for the same steps to the same works to the steps and walls to the north of the public convenience in association with the previous proposal, but this application just seeks listed building consent. This will get a resolution. We're seeking a resolution from members to agree the principle of the proposed works, the listed structure, and then if you resolve to approve the recommendation, the application will then be referred to CADU, and they'll have 28 days to consider our recommendation, and then they will issue the decision if they agree with our recommendation. Here's some photos of the listed war memorial gates. It's Grade 2 listed. The listing description is that they're an interesting example of the inclusion of a memorial to the Great War into an active local philanthropy and a good piece of ironwork of the period in a town which was famed for iron products. They also have a group value of neighbouring listed buildings. So here's some more pictures of the existing steps. So on the left you can see it going from the Italian Gardens and then that slope round. And then the picture on the right is up on that slope where the one set of steps goes off to a central area, and then off to the left the steps go up to Hanbury Road. Here are more pictures of the existing steps, the ones on the left looking down the steps into the gardens from Hanbury Road, and the other looking up those steps. Here's the same drawings that were shown in the previous presentation. You can see how the path would change here and bend around the tree instead of heading towards here where they're proposing an extension. And you can see where it would change from this slope to steps here. And then this is the section that shows the appearance of the retaining wall with the steps, and also shows the relationship with the existing piers that form part of the listed war memorial gates. So and here is a 3D visual just to show you. So the new steps and path would be finished with a grey-black concrete. the retaining walls would be coursed, rough-cut pennant sandstone. The copings would be a cast stone in a grey-beige colour, and the, as we've mentioned previously, the plans show railings that would be black along both walls, but it's not clear why they needed to that extent, and also how they would really appear. So we're proposing a condition that would prohibit the installation of those railings, subject to condition securing their details. We're also recommending a condition that would secure the details of the stone to be used, just to ensure that that is in keeping. So the Heritage Officer has no objections to the proposals, subject to the conditions mentioned. The Heritage Impact Assessment has determined that there would be an insignificant effect on the integrity of the listed war memorial gates. But also they've considered that in with the proposals to the public convenience, and the reason for that slight effect is that views could be hindered, but that is more related to the proposed extensions, because the gradient of the land and the scale of the steps wouldn't be significant enough to hinder any views between heritage assets. So whilst the steps form part of the listed war memorial gates, it's not considered that the proposals would be significant enough to affect the integrity of the gates. So it's therefore recommended that listing building consent be granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. I can't see any hands up. Can you confirm if there are any in the chamber, Geraint?
Councillor Gaynor-James would like to come in, please, Chair.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If you're going down the stairs, the little bit on the left-hand side is full of shrubs and flowers. Well, that is all, according to that, is that going to be all dug up?
We believe that's all to be retained.
It's going to be, it
I
stays
believe
as it
that's
is.
all to be retained, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good, because I planted all them myself.
Yeah, we believe it's all to be retained, but also because this application just relates to the listed building structure, the sort of landscaping is more of a sort of secondary consideration for this consent. It was more of a consideration for the full application.
That's lovely, thanks.
Right, thank you. John Hawler, Councillor John Hawler, would you like to come in now?
Just a point of interest, really. In 1924, on the 5th of August, so nearly 100 years, was when the memorial gates were opened. It's their centenary next year.
Oh, thank you for that, John. Let's hope, well, I don't know whether it'll be finished by that time, but I hope it is. It would be nice. Thank you for that information. Right, there's someone in the chamber wanting to ask a question.
Yeah, Councillor Williams, please, Chair.
Can you come in now, Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Chair. I noted your comments about the railings, and I think obviously entirely appropriate to find out needed, but obviously one of the reasons often for railings being put in place is to make egress easier for people who are older. So I hope that is a consideration when the final determination is made.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Right, no more questions, no more comments. Would somebody like to make a proposal?
Chair? Yeah.
Yes, seconder?
Yes, I'll second that, Chair.
I will.
Right, thank you. You've got your hand up, Councillor Ashley.
I'll take it down.
All right, right. I thought you had a question. Right, we've got a proposal. It's been seconded. Geraint, can you do the same again, please, as you have with the others?
No problem, Chair. I'll start with
Thank
Councillor
you.
Ash.
For.
Councillor Best.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Gordon.
For.
Councillor Hawler.
For.
Councillor James.
4.
Councillor Jones.
4.
Councillor Parish.
4.
Councillor Slade.
For.
And Councillor Williams.
4.
No,
Chair, it's
that's
unanimous.
Yeah, I was just going to say again, it's unanimous again. Right, thank you. Right, I'd like to thank everyone for your attendance and your contributions, and I'll now close the meeting.